Mom and I being like homeless, and like unfortunately mom went between addiction struggles, and I chose to be the man of the house in that situation at a young age. Hip hop fucking saved my life. Like, gave me something to believe in myself about. So I got jumped by a gang of older kids, like 12, 14 of them were doing a gang initiation. And the white boy here, who shouldn't have been at the park with his other white boy friend, got jumped and chased with broken bottles and all that. Your circumstance shouldn't define your happiness. Your happiness should be in your head no matter what the circumstance, you know, so.
Check. Welcome to today's episode of Through the Mud on Humble the Poet Daily-ish. My guest today is the awesome ball of energy that is Evan, aka Ellevan. And we recorded this interview a few months back. And between the process of recording this interview and getting ready to release it, Evan finished a book. So I hit up Evan and I said, hey, can you send us a plug for your book? And in Evan fashion, you know, he gave us something a little bit creative. So enjoy the book plug. I can tell you right now, the audio experience for this book, which is STFU, Shut the Fuck Up, is brilliant. He's done something really creative with the way to present a book from audio standpoint. It's not just him reading the book. It's different voices, different energies, different volumes, different effects. It's really cool. And he's saying some really dope stuff. So check out Evan's little plug for the book and enjoy the interview.
Hey, I guess I'm an author now because my big homie pal humbled the one and he noticed like, yo, you got a story to tell. So I did one myself. It's called STFU. And I think it would feed your soul just like what you're listening to.
And then, yeah, this is also our second attempt because we tried to do a conversation before, and we were technically ambitious. You know, they said, don't overthink it, just try to make it happen. And yes, there's a power to doing these in person. Obviously, this is probably a responsible time not to do them in person, but also this just makes it a lot easier. So
Totally.
Thank you for rocking with me, brother.
My pleasure, man. Always and forever. And it's cool because I didn't take a shower today. So, I'm just kidding. Nah.
I wouldn't know. Yeah.
I'd have to tell you.
I think, and I don't even know if I ever said this to you. Like, I think what pops out to me about you the most is like you have this energy that could only be the result of blossoming. It can't be the result of anything else. Like, you had to have gone through shit to be this ball of happiness and energy that you are. And I think that's what makes it really interesting, because it's not, some people, very often people can, interpret kindness for weakness. People can interpret people who are super happy as, potential pushovers or something. But I can tell, I can see that, you've had to integrate darkness. You've had to integrate challenges. You've had to integrate a lot with who you are. And the result of that is allowing you, or forming you into this just fucking ball of happiness. I advertise you as like the happiest white guy I know, but I think honestly you might just be the happiest guy I know. You're just a ball of happiness and energy. And I know that comes from a story. And I know even me, I don't even know the whole story. I know bits and pieces of the story. And I think our listeners would definitely benefit to kind of just hear about your journey, about some of the shit that you've gone through, and some of the shit that you had to do to kind of find value in those challenges that you went through. And I know it all started back in Vancouver, right?
That's right. Yeah. Thank you so much for your acute awareness into my characteristics. I so greatly appreciate it, because people are either like, he's extremely privileged or extremely not. And then you either get there one way or another. It's like clairvoyance, but appreciate you. Yeah, like before finding any professional value or anything in myself, I was really just always in survival mode, trying to recover from situations I was in, probably a little younger than most people would have to endure. Mom and I being like homeless, and like during school, like in high school, and keeping that to myself, and almost leading a little double life with my parents were divorced, so I had like another household, and you know, living right out the gate in fear and lies, and not having this system be able to accommodate or guide me was also somewhat of a challenge. And then the temptation of, you know, street activity
Yeah.
for gain from friends, that all my close friends were taking that route. So right out the gate, it seemed like it was like challenge. It's like
Yeah.
there was no savior in structured school, or there's no offer for, you know, what, like I'm like whatever, diagnosed Tourette's, ADHD, all these labels.
And
Like,
those are important because it's you know, you were not biologically, you know, predisposed to get plugged into the way the world is.
yeah, I don't perceive structure or copy pasting as a strength, no matter how like
Yeah.
successful it was before. I'm just like, oh no, but like I do it my way, like, or
Yeah.
else it doesn't exist. It's like I'm not utilizing my creative potential. But I believe what you're talking about is some elements between my friends going, like, you know, either to prison or street fights and all that, and then me having to choose to light and remain focused and try to do that at home, while unfortunately mom went between addiction struggles, and I chose to be the man of the house in that situation at a young age, and it left us, you know, house hopping, and, you know, not paying rent and getting evicted, and wondering where your next meal is going to come from, and then also having to lie about that to another place, or any structure, because of fear, of course. And
Fear of what?
well, literally my mom's fear of like me being taken away from her at a younger age, because
Okay.
like being, you know, sometimes I guess left alone, and
So
whatever.
let's stop there for a second. So you know, you grew up in a situation where it's you and your mom, and when I was an elementary school teacher, I saw this sometimes, where sometimes you couldn't decipher the parent from the kid. You know, they could have easily been mistaken for siblings in terms of the way they act, in terms of the, you know, who's in charge, who's making the decisions.
Very youthful.
Yeah. um and it sounds like, you know, especially if your mom was, you know, dealing with, you know, addiction and other issues,
And
you know,
God bless her, she's just doing survival with the tools she had.
and that's a big thing, you know, what is required of people when they need to survive, you know. And I think, I guess my first question is, you know, you said you had to choose to be the man of the house, you had to choose to make certain decisions, you had to choose to, you know, you say like, you know, you grew up on the streets, you had friends who did whatever they had to do to survive.
And they had way
um
less than I did. I felt like the privileged one amongst, you know, my clique,
yeah,
kind of thing, right?
you had
Like,
to choose that perspective. That's an interesting perspective as well, is to be like, yo, amongst, you know, and especially for the youth, I think, you know, the older we get, the more we get exposed to the world, and the more we start to realize, oh, we could have more, things could be better. And but when we're younger, it's kind of like, you know, what you have is what you have, and if you start getting exposed to people who had less, it's better. But I guess my question is, you said, you know, when you saw your friends doing that, you chose the light. You know, when you saw your mom doing this, you chose to be the man of the house. How did you even know there was a choice? Like, was there
DMX.
DMX? Explain that.
Well, I knew that there was a wrong choice. Well, I'll get back to DMX. Hip hop saved my life for real. That's not just like a sweet little thing I say because it sounds cool on a tweet. Hip hop fucking saved my life. Like, gave me something to believe in myself about. But we'll get that later. We'll get there. We'll get there.
I
Later.
wrote it down. We'll definitely get to it.
Nice. But ultimately, I knew that there was a very bad side to the good side of the streets. So, for instance, I was in grade 8. I was 4'11" because I started school early. I was 12 years old in a high school. So there's kids in my high school that were like 16, 17, driving up in cars. And I was still like, had no pubic hair. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I got jumped by a gang of older kids, like 12, 14 of them were doing a gang initiation. And the white boy here, who shouldn't have been at the park with his other white boy friend, got jumped and chased with broken bottles and all that. And the next day, my homie, who was affiliated with like this Latin gang, he's like, well, we're going to go roll up on him. And as empowering as that felt, it also very visibly secured me a ranking in this little, there's a ranking. In
Yeah.
every neighborhood, there's
There's a
ranking.
hierarchy. There's a hierarchy. I mean, there's a hierarchy everywhere.
Exactly. And I'm saying is hierarchy, even if in Bel Air they have it, but it looks more like this rather than, oh, you're associated with them, so we can rob you whenever we want, or you know what I mean? Like,
and this goes back to survival.
I fucking was like clicked up. If I do something, I'm gonna do it right and unique. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's like early, it's like grade 8, and I was like, no. And my homies came to my school the next day to go to that kid's who got jumped into the gang. He just a new member of a gang who just jumped me. My homies were like, well, let's go fight that guy. He's in a gang. What do you think's happened? Like, this is the activity. And then I was just like, nah, my lovely friends still went ahead for me, fought that kid, beat him up. But I was like, no. Yeah. My homie who do love, I don't want to say names, but he did get consumed by that life.
Yeah.
And he fed his kids off as selling on East Hastings. And I can't hate that. And a lot of rappers I idolized took that same path. But I couldn't turn my head away from my mom. She was a sinking ship. So if I went this way, the next couple of years, just like I thought, all my close friends in the system, their moms didn't need that support that I had to actually focus on my mom. So by my mom's weakness, perceivably, actually shifted my focus to take responsibility. So that's how those two things accessed each other in like choosing the light. Like I felt I had to.
Mm-hmm. You hear about people growing up in situations that are less than ideal, but obviously, you know, you grow up where you grow up. So like your normal is wherever you grow up, you know, whether to the outside world is considered dysfunctional, to whether the outside world is considered healthy. However you grew up is how you grew up.
Context matters.
Context matters. Yes. How did you, or what were the signs that you're like, wait a minute, this isn't how it should be, or it could be something different, or it could be something better. Like, what was it? Like, 'cause I'm sure there were moments where, you know, I'm just thinking about, you know, speaking to some of my family members, especially around alcohol. Like, you know, if the kid grows up in a house full of alcohol and, you know, mom and dad, you know, get intoxicated, there's these fun moments, and you just think this is what everybody's parents do. At what point did you start to realize that, hey, it could be something else?
I don't want to say like my dad was not there. He most certainly like was. It was just a split time for me, like legally, like by law. That's intense, split parents, to like tell your kid that like by law you have to be back at whatever time, you know, split household thing. Really intense for kids. Anyone going through divorce, don't share that information. Make it fun somehow for the kids. Make it fun. We don't need to hear that early.
Yeah, they don't need to know the schedule that intensely.
Yeah, but they would argue in front. Like, so my dad was more of a safety guy, mediocrity in terms of like huge life goals. Talented musician, decided to stick to food and beverage, waitering to feed me, you know, tips, bought my first bike. You know, I got to learn a lot by being around the restaurant, like with him. So, and I don't want to say like my mom was completely slum village the whole time either. Right? Shout out slum village though. Dilla beats it, man. No, but my mom also worked for an investment banker early on. So when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe 8, 9, 10, there's like a pocket of like 3 or 4 years, 5 years, where my mom had an apartment downtown, had 2 vehicles, always rolling around with wads. So we went from rich to the opposite.
And you remember the transition.
And I remember the transition. I remember what it felt like. I remember what it looked like. I remember what it smelled like. But that's another weird concept. It's like, why do we keep restabbing ourselves with those things? That was another concept. But like, that's dealing with it as an adult. But growing through it and going to it, I knew that there was another option. So I got to watch the evolution upwards and downwards and kind of feel everything in between. Again, I think hip hop did give me another reality to focus on, because I noticed people were like changing their circumstances with money, but it didn't really give them this thing that I felt from Mace, from Puff Daddy, from Eminem, from Tupac. What was this accomplishment of getting respect you know? So it's like, I knew that there was like something over there. And then I was
Mm.
funny. I was funny first. I was a stand-up comedian before I did rap. So I was like, there's something over there about like self-worth, but I couldn't get to that just yet. I had to like, you know, but I started writing rhymes. I just like didn't, you know,
Yeah. So you were
I didn't.
already, you knew there was something, as you said, there's something out there. And, you know, you may, at that age, you probably can't put it into words, but it felt better. It looked better.
Mhm.
And I think even the simple gesture of orienting yourself, the simple gesture of just turning yourself towards something that feels better, creating, you know, a very, even as a super vague, imprecise aim, but you're just like, I am going to go that way. That
Yeah.
way feels better. It's better than no aim.
Oh, dude. Or it's better than sitting still. Like
That's
that.
still,
That's
yeah.
that's just death. Like when you
Yes.
just sit still. Like that's why sometimes I really sound like a martyr when I push people to be uncomfortable, like when they're around me, because I'm just like, yeah, but if you don't do nothing, then you are doing nothing. So like, what are you doing? Like this death, like do the thing.
It's interesting you brought that up because I know, you know, when we had a solid, I feel like a solid year of like, you know, mutual coaching in
Yeah.
the world of rap where you're a freestyle fucking monster
Thank you.
and I'm more pen to paper. And then so what we did was you know, you were my coach with the big stick for the freestyling and I was your coach with the big stick for the writing.
Yep.
And I think one of the big things that I first noticed was the more challenging I made things, the more I pushed you, like the louder you laughed.
Dude.
You know what I mean? Like anytime, and I mean, it wasn't even just that. You know, we could talk about, you know, putting you in the ice in my bathtub. We could talk about, you know, anything. It's just anytime you were kind of pushed and you could tell that I was nudging you further into the world of the unknown or the uncertain, your response would always be this enthusiastic laugh of just like, yes, 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 like give me more. How did you develop? I don't even have that, bro. Like, how did you develop that?
Because we're here. We're here right now in that moment. All that fear, let that fear get in your body, you little girl. Like, go ahead.
Yeah.
Like, we're here right now. You just gave me a gift of reminding me we're here right now. Oh, that's scary. It's not being jumped by a gang at 12 years old. It's not being homeless with a addiction. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was like, oh, I've done things that make this now seem cute. So
Yeah.
when I do that, I'm observing my reaction and I'm like, oh, you like, let's do this.
Because it's the fight or flight. At the end of the day, we all have this fight or flight, you know, which most of us, you know, call anxiety.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, you know, depending on your environment, that fight or flight is going to get triggered by different things. And I think exactly what you're saying, like if you've gone through a lot of these just, you know, visceral, raw moments of like real violence, real, you know, real struggle, real uncertainty, then all of a sudden the fear of embarrassment, the fear of looking like a fool, the fear of rejection, you know, they're going to be a little bit smaller in comparison. Or if they do trigger that fight or flight, you're still sitting there like, whoa, 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 I know why this is happening.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, you know, I haven't had a gun pulled on me lately. So now my fight or flights, my
And,
threshold has gone down.
and you don't have to judge yourself for being scared either. I think it's like important to like kind of be scared, but do it anyway.
Yes. Yes.
That
I think
feels
that's the
good.
big misconception. People always assume people who are doing great things are not scared. It's like, no, they feel it and they just do it anyways.
Yeah. And then you kind of get, I also had to take a step back. This past year's been really good for balancing like the masculine, feminine energy in my world of just like, I'm such an action forward person that I'm like, can you just sit for a minute? Like, let's make sure that skill is available too.
Yeah.
Because especially I get so much praise for like being a go-getter, but I'm like, can you just not for a minute? And then I tested myself and like gained more patience and then feel less anxiety when about to do things like
That,
biking to
that's
your
that's
place.
a that's a really interesting, valuable point that you brought up, which is like voluntarily putting yourself in these uncomfortable situations. Like,
Yeah.
it's one thing for, you know, life to throw you a curveball. It's another thing for you to like stand in front of the plate and be like, all right, what's coming up? I need something. Bring me
But
something.
if you chase it, you choose.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if life's going to kick your ass anyway.
Yes.
Like, let's say, like, have you ever just tried to wait around and have a quiet patch of life? the calls are coming in, baby, and it's not up to you anymore. It's up to whatever you left left in your thought vortex, like, is coming through in your manifestations and experience. But if you are the creator, that's like, I see gain on the other side of this uncomfortable activity. I might as well do some uncomfortable stuff that has gain attached to it, because life has a schedule for me if I don't make a choice.
And this also goes back to that idea of like, it's the kid on the playground who doesn't want to fight that ends up with the black eye, you know?
Totally.
So it's kind
Totally.
of this like, when we start identifying our fears and avoiding things accordingly, that's kind of like setting a homing beacon for these fears to find us. You know,
Totally,
saying I
dude.
don't want to be embarrassed. You're gonna find yourself getting embarrassed because of that. Because not only are you're manifesting it, you know,
Yeah.
and it's and not only are you manifesting it, you're also feeling the emotions for something that hasn't happened yet.
Bro, and I'm reading this book, Power of Awareness, right now, and it talks about feeling the wish fulfilled in order to manifest your
Mm.
desire. Well, and then I just reverse it, because I'm calling myself on all my bullshit with such clear, concise books that I'm reading that are so informative.
Hey,
Hey, and
for
I'm doing the
those
reverse
on audio,
engineer.
he pulled out my book. Just for those on audio,
Oh,
he pulled out my
sorry.
book.
Of course. Yeah. I got this great one here. Unlearn 101 Simple Truths for a Better Life. And I flipped the script on, this is great Neville Gordon stuff that's saying what to do. And I'm thinking, well, if we're thinking all these fearful thoughts all day, then we're for sure creating the feeling of that wish fulfilled. And wherever you aim your thoughts is like whatever your desire is in that case. So it's like, oh no, you have to like constantly create this new, some people call it challenge. I was like creating. It's kind of like, let's see what happens. Let's roll up the dice here.
Well, and by default, by creating, especially as an artist, you want to create something that hasn't existed. So what this by default means is entering the unknown. You're entering somewhere that you don't know. And the beauty of life is 99% of our existence can it happen in the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes back to what we were saying earlier about orienting yourself. Like
Charles Darwin knew we were the leaders for that reason.
We're always orienting ourselves, whether we do it actively or not. And if we're orienting ourselves to avoid pain, or we're focusing on pain, or we're focusing on fear, like that's what's going to kind of come our way.
Yeah.
And to say like, no, I'm going to, I'm still, I'm trying to create a Humble the Poet original quote here, but it's like, life is trial and error. A good life is, having enthusiasm towards the trials and gratitude towards the errors.
Dude, get the lesson out that.
Yeah, pull the lesson out of that. I want to take it back. So the more time I spent as a teacher, the more I started revisiting my life as a student. I think we had very different school experiences because school is designed for the auditory learner more so than anything else. So like you have auditory learners, visual learners, and kinesthetic learners. Auditory learners, tell them what to do and they do it. Visual learners, show them what they do and they can do it. Kinesthetic learners is show them, let them try to do it, play with it, manipulate it, and they can do it. So school is, especially the higher you go up in school, high school and university, is very biased towards auditory learners. So if you're somebody who needs to, if they say 2 + 2 is 4, if you can just hear it and grasp it, you're good. If they need to draw a diagram for you, they're less likely to. So now some kids get left behind. If you need to like manipulate Play-Dohs or Legos to have 2 here and 2 here and make the 4, even less classrooms are going to do that. And you'll never see that in university.
Yeah.
So as you said, the diagnosis of Tourette's, the diagnosis of ADHD, by default are also kind of putting you in a situation where like, look, the structure and the way that these schools are designed, the type of learners that these schools are going to reward, and the rewards are real. That's the thing. Like we can't lie about what these rewards are, especially for the average person. The rewards are teachers will shine a little bit more favorable light towards you. They require less energy towards you.
Oh, but I got my praise, baby. A man of the people, not the stature.
Well, and this is what I want to ask you
That's how
about.
the class clown sprouted.
And yeah, and I mean, I'm sure that and the class clown wins favor with probably students more than teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah. it can go awry very quickly, where it's like, you know, a student's reputation, and I've seen this with kids I grew up with and also kids that I had to work with, where their reputation was, you know, this kid's going to require more calories than other kids, and only the most passionate and enthusiastic teachers who are in it for all the right reasons are
Yeah.
going to view that the same way you view challenges, with enthusiasm.
Yeah.
That by default over time closes doors. That by default over time closes opportunities. That by default over time also reduces the amount of individuals with knowledge and wisdom to impart it on you.
As well as it limits the threshold of contribution that that person may be able to give.
Oh yeah. Oh,
You
1000%. As I
know?
said, like I got
Fuck.
friends who dropped out of high school who are millionaires because they own auto body shops. They
Yeah.
were kinesthetic the whole time.
You
You
know?
know, it's schools that aren't always designed for that. So I guess my question is, you know, you're already in a situation of struggle. You know, you're already in survival mode,
Mhm.
and it's becoming clearer to you that, you know, these labels that have been put on you, but also like, you know, who you are biologically in comparison to the environment that you're in and what they reward, is not, you know, it's kind of like the cards are stacked against you.
Mhm.
Did you realize that early? Did you kind of think you were getting a bad rap? Did you not, were you not even paying attention to it, and you just thought, did you just tell yourself you were dumb? Like what was it at that point? Because I want to hear about young you. It's not, I don't want to hear about how the adult you process it now.
Right.
What was young you thinking about back then?
I was important to mention, I went through like the worst bullying in my life in grade 8 too, just being like a small kid at a high school.
Hmm.
Um, like just getting like chased home and constantly getting like punched in the back in science class. But the teachers hated me because I was a class clown. So I could always captivate attention. I go for the audience, not the labels. Like I'm out here making fans, not trying to shake hands. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I always resented authority because it, as you said, it didn't pay off when I played their little game for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, oh, a gold star on a piece of paper. And just like, that's not enough for me. Like, I need an experience. Like, you're going to bribe me with what? Like, my mom's just going to pick me up in a short stack limo. Like, when she's balling, you know what I'm saying? We're talking about young me. And so early, like I'm talking grade 3, grade 4, I started to realize, oh, you don't matter. You don't matter. Like, teachers don't know the answer. I'm already listening to my heart as a person, as like a young person, because as the younger you are, the more you're operating with your heart. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't believe you. I don't believe you that if I do X, Y, Z, that you're telling me the best that's going to happen in this like institution is I'm going to get to have to do more of it later. You're sales pitching me into university already. That's the end of the road. And there's still no guarantee. Like, sucker, you know, dude, like my dad's a bartender. What do you want from me? You know, like I didn't believe them. I wasn't sold.
Because they were kind of making empty promises, you know, kind of like what you see on TV. Is like these, you know, not everything's going to end with a full house chat at the end.
Didn't excite me. It didn't excite me. I wasn't like engaged. And as you say, like I had so much resentment. Actually, meeting you and having you as a friend and giving me more perspectives from the inside of being a teacher has actually healed a lot of wounds I had about resentment about teachers in general, because I thought most teachers were uninspired 9-to-5ers, and because they were in lots of my experiences. I went to like inner city schools, underfunded, you know, the books weren't new. They didn't smell good. Like, you know, people didn't have money for field trips. We didn't have teams. Like there was like, school is just a grubby experience for me. So by the time I was in grade 9, I would walk into math class and the teacher would be like, Evan, you can leave if you want. And I'm like, thank you so much. Peace. And I'll just like go walk around the school and start shit. And then I had one smart English teacher who said, yo, if you just like chill, I know you can chill. I know you can chill. If you just chill, I'll give you the last 10 minutes of class to do your improv stuff. And then I was like, okay, deal. So I was good in that class. So she gave me what I actually wanted. I just want it I want it stage time. I just want it to like do the thing that I was good at. Just like when we hang out and I just start freestyling, it's like there's an impulse to just like chase this thing that I know rises my vibration. So
Yeah.
I guess I kind of subtly became aware of the ability to raise your vibration like internally through this thought process. And I also spent a lot of time in the office. Teachers couldn't deal with me, man. They would send me to the office, and I that little nurse room where they put the bad kids in the office. So I just started talking to the nice, hot secretary lady that worked at the school. And before you know it, I was on a first name basis, like with the adults. So I was ostracized from the system just by being. It's just like, I'm pretty sure I don't have to worry about like getting an agent to book a movie. Voila. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, what are you talking about? My high school counselor told my mom that Evan's probably the type to drop out and move to LA and make it. She said that.
Wow,
She's
that's
like,
interesting.
yeah, like she was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what to say. When I did drop out, the principal did say, I know that I failed, Evan. Like, he knew that. You know, with all the gang violence, there were some kids just got a hammer to the face last week before I dropped out of the school. And I was a class clown. I was going around getting everyone to like sign me out as my mom stared him down heavy gang mode. And, you know, they're like, still get your education. And, you know, I'm like, I will.
And
Just
that goes
not
back
here.
to this level of environment. You know what I mean? Like it's, you know, I noticed too when I was teaching. I taught in an inner city school,
Mm-hmm.
and like you're not even given the basics to like
No.
keep yourself in a decent situation to be prepared to deal with a room full of kids who are on such a different spectrum of context and education and what have you. So I mean,
Yeah.
that's really enlightening that at least, you know,
That's intense.
you did come across a few adults who saw it in you, even
Yeah.
if they couldn't identify it. They were able to, you know, it wasn't. And I think the other thing that really stands out with you, over many people is this authentic, you know. So when you say the stuff about, you know, questioning adults and authority at the age, you know, at the age of 8 or 9, I believe you because I know you, and you know, and I know how nutty and radically you actually love yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and, but this idea of self-love is such, you know, it's in a world where we're taught not to love ourselves. Somebody
I
who loves
know.
themselves comes across a certain way, but I
Oh,
see it.
people hate it.
Well, they do. They definitely do. And the thing is, I see it in you, and I, you know, and this was part of our last unsuccessful conversation. I see it in you because not just in how you talk about yourself, but more so in how you carry yourself, and even more so in how you interact with people. You
Word.
know,
Thank
and
you for
again,
that.
it goes back to what you said earlier, which is it's so easy to interpret it as privilege.
Do you want to know what I'm doing there?
What are you doing?
I just realized it. That exact moment where you're talking about like when I interact with people, people think if I was any more street aggressive, people would think I'm trying to dominate them
Hmm.
because the confidence is so loud. But what I'm doing, I had a realization of what I'm doing. When I look at you, you're already, in my opinion, so amazing, successful guy, but I'm shooting love beams at you and I'm seeing the best, even better version of you. You sold 1 million books. I'm seeing the version that sold 11 million books. So we can high five about it because I'm 11. You know, I'm thinking about this person actually as a really better version already, no matter who it is. And then I'm like, fucking sweet. And then I'm jacked and then I'm not scared. And then sometimes that can trigger street people because I remember when the confrontation frequency was on two bulbs and they were both looking for each other, there was a certain body language that happened.
Yeah.
And I almost come off as confrontational first. So people may either back off if they don't want it or pucker up if they do want it.
Yeah.
And then it's weird with both of those things when they realize, oh, this guy's not fronting on me or this guy's not trying to dominate. I'm actually just thinking about how fucking sick it would be if more cool shit happened for you. So I just generally had to get this thing out of my head where I was very dark and negative judgment because I was always writing like battle rhymes about people in my head. So I was finding their weaknesses and like, And then I'm
And you
also,
reframed that.
I reframed it. I had to. I had, as you so brilliantly put it last time, is I got good at changing the channel. And it
Yeah.
was like, this person, XYZ, you can take them out like that. It's like a really good fighter being able to size up someone if they have a limp or
Yeah.
something. I'm like, mentally, I know right where your fucking weaknesses are. And, I'm going to put my thumb in that if you ever fuck with me. But I switch it to like, what about this person's strengths? Blow fire into that. And then you don't have to be scared of anyone's greatness. You hope everyone's great. And then when the real version of them disappoints you and only sells 5 million books, you're like, it's all right. Good try.
It's so funny you brought that up. So, I've been racking my brain with a quote I heard, just because it's so simple, but it never crossed my life in all the years that I've been alive. And it was during my DMT experience with my guide.
Oh,
And
nice.
she just kept saying, love has no opposite. And I had this moment where, and I was knee deep in it. So I'm already, I haven't spoken to you about the experience, but like it's a 2-round experience. Round 1, I didn't follow all the procedures properly. So round 1 was kind of like I wasn't there. I was in and out of the worlds. I was doing whatever. So I'm kind of overwhelmed, and I'm like breathing heavy, and I'm just like, holy shit, what the fuck is going on? And then she looks at me, she's like, remember, love has no opposite. And just instantly in my head, I'm just like, how has nobody ever said those words to me in my entire life?
That's
Like,
so beautiful.
because it's such a simple statement that I've never heard. And
Oh,
then, I've spent the last few weeks like taking a very deep dive into like,
yeah.
what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
And it's not about like, because people will be like, well, hate is the opposite of love, or fear is the opposite of love. Like, no, they're not.
No, hate's a sweet little mask worn by the ego to put a pin in something that you actually want to get back to, but you don't feel
Yeah.
worthy right now.
And in addition to that, it's not even that love has no opposite. Love exists in the place where opposites stop to exist.
Oh, there's no
Because
duality because love is like the oneness. So
beyond,
duality was here. Yeah, it's
so,
beyond duality.
so there's a good, and I don't want to butcher the Rumi quote, but it was like, meet me in the field beyond right and wrong. Right. And that's this idea. So when I'm thinking about what you're talking about here is like, because I was thinking about like when I first started going to New York, these big cities, and these big cities, it's like, people, strangers walk up to strangers to talk to you all the time. And for me,
Oh yeah.
I loved it. I thought it was dope. And one of my
Yeah.
friends who was doing his medical residency in Detroit, he goes, they're testing you. Remember that every single time. These people are, they're not just walking up to you on some small town pleasantries. They're testing you. They want to see who you are and where you're at. And I thought it was really interesting that you brought it up, because at the end of the day, when whether you were walking up to somebody, and I remember having this a lot in high school, because just of the way we dressed, the amount of people that just assumed, I would be if you were looking for weed, I would look like somebody who sold weed. So they would just walk up to you. So, you're testing the waters, you're dipping your toe in, you're trying to figure out if someone's a mark, you're trying to figure out if somebody is somebody you can mess with, push around, take their lunch money, all of these different things.
Absolutely.
You're
We're
testing
always gauging that. Boardrooms are full of it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the beauty of what you did was and as you said, it can be, because at the end of the day, you're talking about, from the street side, at the end of the day, if you're doing it from a street angle, like let's say you're trying to sell something, either you're still selling something, instead of trying to say, okay, well, what is this person's weakness and how can I exploit it? Now you're like, what is this person's weakness and how can I prop it up? What is this person's strength so I can avoid it? Or what is this person's strength so I can blow fire into it? Yeah. And what you're saying is, you're moving past that duality, and you're existing beyond that duality, which is that love, which is that deep centered love, where you're like, I have been given the mechanisms and the training to know a person and read between the lines and see the unseen with an individual. And for a long time, that was used to exploit, that was used to survive, that was used for this. And now I'm able to, I use the exact same mechanisms, I'm using the exact same eyes, but I've changed its purpose and I've changed its context now to being like, how can I empower? How can I inspire? How can I connect? How can I do all of these things?
And how can I not be scared anymore as well? It was slightly selfish as well. I just want to
Expand
be honest.
expand on that.
Well, be like water, baby. Bruce Lee. Much like yourself as a teacher, I'm sure you experienced. I was hosting and leading this weekly open mic, and one time where my good version, my love for these people who would come, they're kind of like my weekly sessioners class vibe, of musicians and stuff, and just bar goers. They all became part of this little culture community thing. Um, you know, this is just a good story of how like I don't have to fear when I am looking at people like that. So this guy got drunk, one of them one night, and in that mode, you're not like masculine, strong on strong. So you're always kind of like divinely guided. So he got drunk and tried to jump on me. But because I have this love accepting mode, I just like flipped him over my back real quick, like thud. I thought I hurt him real bad, but he was just like, oh, and he accepted the L because I am not to be fucked with, because I am here for love. And I have a higher sense of fair boundaries, and I have a higher sense of reasonable, like, look, I just gave you like energy. I was full focus and present with you, but now when it's time for me to leave, I'm gonna leave. And like, you know what I mean? Like I give this respect. I'm Italian, so you're in the mafia. It's like, here you go, I love you, I trust you, here's the keys. If you fuck me over a little bit, you're fucking out of here. Like,
So that's an
put you in
important
the
thing
trunk.
I want to ask you about too. So
Yeah.
what that means is like, and this is what going back to, like, somebody, can easily mistake, as I said, that level of kindness for weakness, but there's clearly not a weakness. But the only reason there isn't a weakness is because there was an integration of that side,
Yeah.
the showing of your teeth,
Yeah.
you're not walking around with your chest out like an alpha male trying to pick on people, trying to dominate people, trying
No,
to.
because they're weak. If someone's acting like that, they're searching for something outside of themselves, so they're
Yeah.
already weak.
But there's also the other side where people just want to be likable, so they don't say anything, and then that builds up resentment within them. That builds up a whole different level of darkness.
I've been learning about that. Winnie has more of that, which is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's and it's kind of like, and that's the thing, because we in this world of opposites, we're like, there's good, there's bad, there's my good side, there's my bad side, and it's like, nah, there's just you, and
Yeah.
and everything can help and hurt. That hammer can build a house, that hammer can smash the skull.
How you perceive it though, too, right? Like, it's all just like immediately a tool if you can gain from it and you can utilize those lessons and implement them right away. It's like how quick you can digest and get over it. But if I may compliment you on your G, you have a wonderful, I call people's the energy that they can put, that's like grounding, but also just strong, is like kind of like their G. It's like your aura. And I I've actually used yours as a reference to be transparent for my own development in mind, going from more of an aggressive, as I said, sometimes my forceful energy can like shock people.
Yeah.
And you have a wonderful, calm, present G that's like, hey, I'm not going to bump that guy, but like also I'm not scared of that guy. Like, I don't think he's going to attack me. That's really nice. And I think it's important to like develop a center point of energy like that, because then you're not basing it off anyone else's energy. You don't have to worry to react. You can just like be.
And I think it's beautiful because we both got them from very different places. Some similar places, some very, I think, I'm part of one of the rare heritages that really promotes martial. So, I was raised to and all the spiritual teachers that we have, and the gurus, were involved in the armies, were fighting. Certain gurdwaras, which are understood as the temples. They have pictures of modern day martyrs, and we have, I was looking at dead bodies since I was a kid. Any Punjabi Sikh knows this. If they've gone to a gurdwara, like they take people who have fought for the struggle, and they literally take their before picture and then they take their after picture. Like when they find their dead bodies, they post their pictures and call them heroes. And these are pictures hanging up on the hallways. Like these aren't, they're not.
Wow.
So you're a little kid looking at all this stuff, and you're taught that these are heroes, and you're looking at bodies. There's one where he has, like a press for clothes. He has those scars all over his body because they tortured him, and they broke all his limbs. And this is a photograph I remember. This is just on the wall, and we're looking at this stuff all the time. Yeah.
Wow.
So there's that element of it, there's
Wow.
there's a heavy alpha maleism, borderline toxic masculinity element of like, my culture and my caste. I'm part of the farmer class, and we got our own, as what's happening in our history right now too. Like,
Yeah.
we're
Stand
what's
with
the
the
best way?
farmers.
Yes, stand with the farmers. And it's just so a really good way to put it, which is what's in my DNA. And I'm not taking all the credit for this, because at the end of the day, not being afraid of somebody testing me doesn't mean I'll always be successful if they do.
Oh,
But
for sure. No,
yeah,
it's like, but it's okay to get your ass kicked as long as you didn't live in fear about it.
well, and that's the thing.
Someone's gonna
Yeah,
sock you in the face. It is what it is.
there's been a lot of those. I've had a lot of those experiences, which was like, look, you don't have to, getting your ass kicked, as long as you talk shit after you get your ass kicked, like you lived another day, right? But there's also this,
Scrappy little dogs.
yeah, and there's also a brilliant story that I was told recently by some historians about like when the Punjabi Sikh people, when they were in alignment with the British, and they were fighting, different wars and stuff like that. There's one story about how, they all had a meeting. They're like, all right, we're going to, invade that enemy camp at like 6 a.m. So we'll see you guys here at 6 a.m. And then immediately after the meeting, the Sikh regiment goes and attacks.
They're
Like,
just hype.
yeah, they don't wait. So there's this culture that I grew up in of like, where's the smoke? Where's the
Oh,
smoke? We
yeah.
not only are we down for the smoke, where's the smoke? I haven't had, I haven't had a conflict today. And I
Oh
think for me,
man.
especially on this side of the pond, there's been a lot more in my conversations with people. And then
Yeah.
when I became a school teacher, I saw a lot of that had to change, because I could only have those conversations with the kids, not my colleagues. Because,
Right.
try to you speak in a straight line to somebody at work, you can get written up. That's
Yeah.
considered aggressive and stuff like that. So there's definitely been for me,
Wow.
finding that and working it. And again, as you said, like there's different parts. Like,
There's
you know,
mad wisdom in war, though.
yes, because it's
Like there is
conflict, and it's the analogy for the internal war.
exactly it when it pits you against you, and just like if you can read the Bible or whatever, and then depict like, oh, the internal kingdom and all that, and Christ consciousness, and make all the parallels of just like oneness or whatever we have all the natural technical tools for. You look at it from a different angle, and you're like, oh, this is just about when I get anxiety and need to breathe. Like, it's just like poetically put, and just
Yeah,
like, there's simple, basic, beautiful values from all these, of course, historically like brutal things. The images, that's intense. This torture stuff. Holy fuck.
bro, I'll take you one day. I'm not even
It's,
kidding. Like
it's got,
this is
I want
regular.
to see. It's kind of like when you're young and you're forced to watch Goodfellas as a little Italian boy.
Yeah.
This is our people. You put them in the
Like,
fucking
listen,
trunk.
look, these are our people, and our people are stereotypes. And if you stop acting like this, they'll stop stereotyping us, and we won't be funny characters on The Simpsons anymore.
And they'll stop like giving us this power of fear based on misconception.
Yeah, and then
Blanket statements.
we'll no longer corner the pizza and lasagna market.
Oh man, you work well with cheese.
I think another really good example that I had taken from in my high school, this was Malcolm X,
Mm,
because Malcolm X was Detroit Red before he was Malcolm X. He was a notorious gangster. In prison, his nickname was Satan.
word.
He was really bad. So what he used to do was his father was killed by the Ku Klux Klan.
Word. So
And
it's just put hate right there in the heart.
yeah, his arms were tied behind his back, and he was put on the train track, and the train, decapitated him, and then the police ruled it as a suicide.
Amazing.
So,
Disgusting.
what that informs. So
Well,
what
it birthed a very necessary giant.
well,
Horrible
eventually,
thing.
yeah. So
Eventually, but
who he used to be before Detroit Red, what he used to do was he used to go on dates with white women, and while he went on a date with the white women, his friend would rob them. He robbed their entire home. So when they came back and saw there was nothing there, these women, this is people. Everything you own is in your apartment. This is before bank cards, right? So
fuck.
all of a sudden these women would just be like, "Oh my God, I have nothing," and then he would be like, "Well, I can help you make some money," and then he would get them into prostitution.
Oh shit! And
Yeah, so,
and sell them back to white men.
yeah, so he was a pimp, and he
Shit.
even the day he got arrested, to go to jail, which is what got him exposed to the Nation of Islam, which turned him into the Malcolm X. Even that
Wow.
day, he almost went out in a shootout. Like he He was always
He's a bad motherfucker.
a bad motherfucker. But
strong G.
and then what he did was he didn't deny any of that when he flipped over to Malcolm X. He just took those same tools. He took the charismaticness that could convince someone to become a prostitute. He took his leadership abilities. He took his, his fearlessness, and he converted it for a new cause, for a new purpose, and a new why. Instead of judging these as good and bad. And I think that's that important side, because I see that same shit with you, where it's like, look, all these tools, all these survival mechanisms, all these things that I have, now I'm able to take them. All these things that at one point could be considered a wound are now I'm using them to empower not only myself and other people. And I think, I definitely want to honor you for that. I think that's just so freaking dope. And the more time I spend with you, the more I see it. Like, it's not, again, I don't want to knock anybody for being, quote unquote performative and doing things for display purposes. But it's like, you can only fake the realness for so long, and
Totally.
when it's in your core. And the thing is, it's only in your core because it comes from a place of pain. And I love your story because it reminds me of one of my favorite quotes, which is, to go from a bad place to a better place, you have to go through a worse place.
Yeah. Because you're left with it. When a situation deals you some cards, you can play them correctly, but it doesn't mean that you don't have to go unpack that. Yes. Like, you have to do that work. And I think that's a lot of things. A lot of times I hear people try to skip over the healing part, and then they're just claiming I'm good. And I'm like, all right, you enjoy that in a week or two. Like, it's like, it's okay. Like, I wanted to be honest. I almost caught myself off from being very honest. And before we go back into those notes, this is the perfect closure point, if you don't mind.
No, by all means.
I am now currently the longest sober from self-harm physically, where I punch myself in the face.
Okay, talk about this. I didn't know about this.
Yeah, I know. So that's why I'm like, I got a exclusive. It's part of, I think, like Tourette's, the impulse. You may notice I go like this.
Yeah.
It's I don't want to say I can't control it, but I almost can control it when I realized, after overcoming it and meditating on it, and COVID helped with like praying for patients, is one, I had a pain addiction. We all have a pain addiction, but it's overcoming it slowly and unlocking it and stop feeding it. But you can't just go cold turkey. So I would get to the point where mentally the energy that comes into my being out of a reaction of pain or not feeling enough or just painful circulative bullshit, outdated pattern thoughts that I was unwinding out of my being.
Can you give a real life example? Because I'm sure people listening are going through the same thing.
So I've socked myself in the face out of a meditation because I got lost in a rabbit hole during that meditation about how I've made wrong moves and missed opportunities in my career.
Coulda, woulda, shouldas.
And then the bullshit self-worth started spiraling. And then with a history like I have from a starting point, it's really easy to just like degrade and fall back on yourself and be like, yo, I'm literally a nothing piece of shit. Like, who do I think I am? So all of that, I'm like extremely face forward happy. Like, I'm pretty much in a flow now because I feel whole finally for the first time. And hence not hurting myself anymore physically. But right out of a meditation, it was just like, as soon as the energy came back into my body from like floating up there, like, and it wouldn't be a higher source consciousness because I wouldn't be able to have those thoughts there. So I was locked in the ego. So I was in the mind, but when I decided to come back, I thud, man, and I gave myself a black eye. And I was not being kind to myself because
are you punching yourself because you feel like you're worthless, or are you punching yourself for having that thought and being like, yo, snap out of it?
The emotion in the head hurts more than the physical sensation of the distraction. So that's what I realized I was doing. But I was putting this beautiful cheekbone and settings at risk, baby. This is the money maker, baby. I can't hurt this shit. This is for the people. But I'm saying, though, I just wanted to be really super honest about that because of your amazing praise of my positive attitude, that I for sure have like a David Goggins counsel in there. You're in there. I got some counsels in my head that won't let me fall below a certain like active life point. I won't do shit unless I'm like gonna kill it, like I want to kill it. But I've constantly been lessening my addiction to pain. And congratulations, I'm probably like 10 months ago was the last time I hit myself, and I haven't even had a close urge to for like 6. It's getting less and less. It's like
Okay, so let's
honey.
talk about that, because I think I don't know the exact term, so forgive me, but I the one I've heard is self-harm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that, as you said, like, it's, you know, we're not thinking creatures who feel, we're feeling creatures who think. And what you said with that punch in the face is like, yo, what's happening in my head needs to go away. So I'm gonna, you know, replace it with physical,
which is
Here,
less.
so here's my question. You know, you've done 10 minutes. Sorry, you said it's been 10 months. You know, it's probably a great marker of progress. I mean, nobody's perfect. You know, this might be with you, you know, forever, or maybe
It was 6 months before that, and it was 3 months before that 6 months, and it was a month before that. So it's literally
baby
like
steps are adding up.
it's an addiction. So it's like you can expect probably a relapse in 2 months, but then I won't do it for a year and a half. You know what I mean?
Can you share some of the best practices that you've been doing to kind of address the self-harm? Again, I'm very confident to some folks listening going through that. I know some folks going through that.
Yeah.
And I personally haven't had too much experience with it. So, you know, I'm so grateful that you shared that, because I feel like you can get some real world practical experience and advice and practices that kind of have helped you make some progress in that space.
Amazing. Thank you. The pinnacle point of the transition of the tipping point is why I think I'm like feeling more whole, I would call it, is truly understanding that your thoughts are manifesting your reality. That's the pinnacle point. But I'm saying that right now, and just like the first time I heard someone say that, I'm like, okay, thanks, thanks, boss. Like, go fuck yourself. You know, like I get it.
Easier said than done.
Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah.
And do that. Go through that right now, where you don't think that that's enough, and that's why it's the pinnacle point, because simplicity is the hardest thing.
That's how it starts. Yeah.
You know, so that's like just kind of here. You're like, eventually you'll understand that like I'm a creative being, like in life, like whatever you perceive yourself to be is like what will be. It's not like you are something and you're observing it. It's like you get to do the programming. Like that's so next level. And I've done so many mushrooms that have helped me observe that. But the baby steps towards that mountaintop peak is the first thing I found was the joy in being able to take your power back by simply taking a breath. If you hate yourself right now, good, you can hate yourself in 5 or 10 seconds. But right now, take a breath just physically, because sometimes technique moves the spirit. We want to have the mental, energetic, spiritual shift sometimes without doing work. Pound out some push-ups, take some breaths. You know, if you're not in the habit of meditating yet, I know that's a discipline of its own that requires focus. But there are things that you can do, and immediately it's just breath. You just remind yourself, and like Humble's tattoo, when you look down, you realize it's just like now. So you don't have to be all the things that you were just thinking about yourself. Yeah. And you can create a new image, because like every second the quantum is like flickering your reality based on what you last remembered it to be. So it's too deep to really like give this full understanding in like a pill form.
Well, can I attempt to paraphrase it, and then you just let me know?
Please.
Yeah, let me get my teacher talk going on. So I think, you
Please.
know, as you said, I think step 1, let's say step 0 is, first off, this isn't a light switch. It isn't I am only self-harm. I am no longer self-harm. It's not. It's
Yeah,
going to
no.
be it's going to be progress over perfection with this for sure. Step one is understanding your thoughts paint your reality. What you think will become your life. The more you focus on your thoughts, the more you have an impact on your life. Again, we're not going to treat it like a light switch. We're
I
just
feel like I'm sorry. I feel like that step is the pinnacle point. Like,
the
say
starting point.
no, if there's
Pinnacle. What's pinnacle?
the final destination.
Oh, that's the final
That
destination.
awareness is like over here,
Yeah.
and we're starting to climb up the mountain towards that awareness. Because once if you lock into that awareness, if that can be your step one, you're good. Like, because you won't think bad thoughts. Then you'll only think good thoughts. You'll twist your head in perspective towards a better thought, but that's easier said than done. So the baby steps towards there, I'm saying step one could be like breath.
Well, yeah, and I was going to say that because I think that's really good too. The mind body connection. I know Tom Bilyeu says that we talk a lot about how our our mind can impact our body, but also our body can impact our mind, because that's pretty much what you said now, which is like, as the wise Wim Hof says, breathe, motherfucker, right? Like, so now, you and going back to, back to it not being a light switch, which Joe Dispenza saying, you're going to react. We are all going to react.
Yeah.
How long we react can be in our control, and what we do to shorten those reaction times, and what we do to reduce the volume of our emotions in those times, will make a difference. So like a beautiful quote that I heard him say was like, you don't get sad because you think about your ex. You think about your ex because you're sad. It's and I think so. The initial step is just acknowledging this relationship between, just the acknowledge of the relationship of your thoughts, and being like, look, A, don't trust everything you think. B, pay attention to your thoughts. Another note I wrote down, I don't know who said it, was like the moment you begin questioning your emotions is a moment you pull away from placing blame on those emotions. So, and all of these I feel are going to guide us towards this idea that our thoughts paint our reality. And I know I've seen this myself, where I'm in a bad space, I'm in a bad mood for whatever reason. It might be not getting enough food, it might be not getting enough sleep, it might be just getting, real life bad news. Sometimes things are late in the mail, sometimes things don't go your way. And then all of a sudden, in my head, it's just like, yo, where's the smoke? And now it's like, yo, let me go pick a fight with that one other person who I had an issue with. Today's the day. Today's the day to go, vomit this out on somebody else. And it's about that awareness of just being like, yo, everything I'm feeling, if I breathe, literally breathe, and it's not, and let's start from the beginning. There does not need to be any secret breathing techniques. It's breathe deliberately, as I'm learning now, you want to prioritize your inhale more than your exhale for now, because the inhale is the receiving. Try that. But again, there's 1,000,001 different breath works. Don't worry about that right now. Just worry about the idea that you should breathe more deep and breathe more intentionally instead of the shallow breaths that we take. So I think, and again, I feel like everything you just said, like these steps, they don't just apply to self-harm. They can apply to almost everything and anything.
Well, I think the key to proactiveness is dropping the victim shit. Like, that's just like, you can't be a victim and a winner at the same time. I'm sorry. And I know shit happens, man. Life happens. I get it. It's tough. And people who have it harder than me will judge me, be like, hey, but you don't know. Okay, but I know my version, and it must have felt close to maybe your version at some point. But I'm not trying to compare. I'm saying I know how much it sucks. So it's
come up in every conversation I've had with every single person.
You can't be a
victim. That's what's making me laugh. Everybody's brought that up. You just can't be a victim.
I name my label No Victims Unit to remind me, why do your streams look like that if you don't like it? Get to work. Or why do they look good now? Because you didn't think like a victim. Because it's like, that's the choice. That's the choice.
You're making moves or you're making excuses. And
like, fuck, I wish excuses paid the bills, man. So many people be so many millionaires.
No, and I love that. And I think it's also important that we recognize, again, a lot of these things like the self victimization, the anxiety, the paranoia, the lack of awareness of how much we can contribute to our emotions and our feelings. A lot of this is like these are the pre-loaded apps in our phone, but they're also there's a lot of people and entities and powers that profit off of
running
making us feel this way.
running on fear. Those things
Yeah.
are like running on fear. So it's your job to like shift them because yeah, you've been given a plate of jail food and now you have to make it gourmet. So you got to get creative. So the same creativity that it takes in your brain to think a bad thought, just use that creativity to think like a wild thought. Like Drake is a crazy famous R&B artist. He was Jimmy in a wheelchair. Think about what he did in front of everyone. That is power of the mind. His perception changed
Yeah.
your perception. So it's not like, oh, I can't do that now because this other thing. Or like, where are you right now? You got the same two hands that someone else got that you've like called a master at something. You got the same access to getting there.
Yeah, and recognize the things that are going to feed you the other way. So as I said, like right now, the news, for example, is really encouraging people to pick sides and take teams. And the moment you pick sides and take teams, now your side is the victim of the other side. So, or these problems are all your problems. And I think
And
that's just
resentment.
important. Yeah, and resentment and division and fear. All of this shit is there. And again, I'm not even saying quit the news. What I'm trying to say is notice it in the news and notice that it's not happening by accident. Notice that this is it's potato chips, man. It's addictive, and these people keep you on going that way. So I think
it's programming.
It
called
is programming. It is programming. I look at the programming as a secondary consequence to the it's kind of like feed them full of junk food and they die of heart attacks. I don't think the intention was to give them heart attacks. The intention was just to keep making money off the junk food.
Profit.
And
it's like a Pepsi machines in schools. It's like, interesting choice.
Yeah. Interesting choice. And
interesting choice to let that poison directly in there for the check, homies.
And
nice
that's
job,
our world. And we
protectors.
Trust so much of our world. Yes. And we trust so much of our world with all this bullshit. So I think that's really interesting. I have a list of things I want to talk about, but before that, and thank you so much for sharing this section on self-harm. I think a lot of people are going to find value in that. I want to go back.
You are not your thoughts.
You are not your thoughts.
You are not your thoughts.
Everything you feel. Don't trust everything you feel.
Yeah.
And learn the difference between reacting and responding.
Yeah.
It's practice. It's going to take practice.
Yeah.
And speaking of practice, so at this point now you're dropping out of high school, and I want to go back to the narrative for a second.
Yeah.
And I want to pretty much get you to the point where I met you. So selfishly, I want to know what happened in the story, what happened in the rest of the movie. You drop out of high school. You already, because you've already taken a level of responsibility in terms of wanting to take care of your mom and probably also taking care of yourself. So you're probably a little bit more equipped than the average. How old are you at this point?
16.
Okay, so the average 16-year-old, you're probably a little bit more equipped than the average 16-year-old to kind of survive.
Yes, sir.
What does the next 5 years look like?
Amazing. Transition, painful, amazing. Okay, let's do it. 16, drop out, immediately get a job as a busboy at the restaurant my dad was a waiter at on Robson Street. I immediately pay to put myself in acting classes that guarantees you an audition with Vancouver Talent Management. Paid the class with my tips I was making. I was 16 years old. 50 just signed Mobb Deep. They put out that album, Pearly Gates. Get me to talk my way in. You know what I'm saying? I'm going around feeling like a hustler, listening to Get Rich or Die Trying soundtrack, 16 years old, getting my tip out every night, walking around with cash in my pocket, starting to buy groceries. I get this acting agent. Before I dropped out of school, I tried to submit to this art school where the bougie white kids were, the parents who drop you off in the Mercedes, parking lot is on Mercedes. I was starting to get noticed in my school as a good actor because I actually did this play and people loved it. And they were like, oh, this problem child actually has talent. So before I actually signed those papers to drop out, I tried to transfer, but this school said no to me because if I had a bad reputation, because they give you a mark, your report card shit follows you everywhere. Like I was just considered a bad kid. If I was a bad kid from that school, in the eyes of this school, I'm a danger to their clients. So that's why I never felt white. I was never accepted by white people. Like it wasn't a thing where it's like, oh, that one is like, yo, I walk with a limp, get out of my way. Like, fuck y'all. Like, anyway, moving on. As much as very kind people I've met along the way. Back to the why the school thing was a reference. I booked my first commercial within a month. And where did we shoot? Where was the location? That school that said no to me. I tried to go there for my acting program. 3 months later, I made $3,000 in one day in that gymnasium as a 16-year-old with another job. Thanks, no school. So like I was like feeling really like revved up. And then I was auditioning and making more money. I got a job at another restaurant, like a fine dining restaurant. And I started to save my tips and take me and my mom to LA. So she would take care of the stay in LA. One time she got like a mining trip, cost covered, meaning it didn't come out of her pocket, but she hustled her way into it. Was at the Thompson, like in Beverly Hills, 1 year. Wow. But I would pay for the plane tickets. And I was also like, she was on EI and drinking a lot and like every night. And like there was a gay club across the street in Vancouver. So I was underage, rolling around with money, give my mom $50 for her nails, like an Italian fucking boy would. And I get my tips at this other place. And so I was in fine dining and I started doing stand-up comedy. And I'm 17 years old. I'm in the clubs with guys, who have written movies and at the local bars in Vancouver and stuff. And I'm meeting the OGs and I start putting myself through school as Vancouver Theater Sports League. That was like the only college I ever wanted to do because I like the improv performance. So I'm actually trained freestyler pretty much actually, but I took freestyle my own way with my love of hip hop. But so I did any training because I could then. Like, I had a couple $100 on me all the time. It was like the course was like $300 every like month. So I just did that. And then I met Winnie when I was 18 and I had booked 3 or 4 commercials and Winnie went to AMDA in LA. So she just paid a bunch of money to be told what set looks like. And I was young.
You met Winnie in LA?
No, we moved together when I did stand up, which I'll get to. Still in this 5 years. When we were 20.
And just for context, Winnie is your life partner.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I met her when I was actually 18. After a couple of years of just like
that's all. I have to write that one down. Just
yeah, I know it's fucking crazy.
Good looking guys who stay with one girl like this. We love you, Winnie. I understand why, but I'm just.
Oh, bless you. Yeah. So honestly, dude, between like 16 and 18, I worked as an actor and shout out Sean Milliken, one of the casting directors in Vancouver who kept booking me. I was just this funny kid. I was skinny. I had a Jufro. So my shit doesn't grow like normal white people. It grows like an afro. Like, so I had this distinct funny look. So I was getting all these commercials and I just drank with my mom for a couple of years and started going to LA. So I started blueprinting where and what I wanted to do. So with my mom, we met Bobby Lee and Mo Collins at the Comedy Store when I was 16, 17. Bobby Lee got us in, with his guest pass and he was doing stand up at his early days at the Comedy Store. And later when I was 20, me and Winnie, who met in an improv troupe. So I put those training to use. We joined an improv troupe off Craigslist. And we moved to LA together. And then I performed at the Comedy Store like fairly consistently when I was 20.
Wow.
Yeah, I was doing shows with Chris D'Elia. Like he was so fucking hilarious when he was underground, dude. He's like, it inspired me to chase my rap more because I knew I could improvise that way better with rhyming. Like he would do it, but in conversation, like he's obviously, look what happened. Yeah. Fucking Andrew Schultz too. Crazy crowd work. Like just peer into the soul of the
Yeah, shout out to
situation.
Andrew Schultz, man. Shout out to
Bam.
Andrew Schultz, man.
Uh yeah. So then I did that, and then I realized that's not what I wanted to do. Cause fucking Chris D'Elia was just so much better at it than me in that format. And I look back, there's clips of me just doing what I do anyway as Ellevan, slightly comedic, more piercing commentary, rap flow. But I was singing Frank Sinatra at the main stage at the Comedy Store.
So at this point, what is the biggest? Because I mean, it sounds like you're pursuing this art kind of, full dive inside. And what are you? But what is the biggest issue and challenge that you're facing during this chapter?
Being so broke and doing it anyway. Like moving to LA for
Mm.
several months and like literally thinking you're balling out on yourself by getting the 5 for 5 at CVS.
Mm.
Like, dude, it's like gas money time. And it was just like, we saved up a couple grand, our families helped us out. We had our car, luckily we stayed with friends who had an open room that we could just pay half rent for.
Mm.
So we did that. I think we were there for like 3 or 4 months. And, to try to like join a new scene with no resources or funds, like that is extremely difficult because I'd been doing it at home and it's still tough to do the open mic scene. And that's how I integrated into Toronto as well. And that's serious elbow grease. Respect to anyone who's been out there on the scene doing those shows. And it hurts your heart a bit. As I got those fun gigs, where you had to buy tickets from the promoter, you had to buy your tickets up front in cash and then hopefully sell them to people. And you're not going to do that because you're a new act. Only people who kind of pity you buy it. And then they come and support because they're there to support. But then I would always get such a kick out of actually delivering for those people. Where I ended up taking my music is I convert people from thinking, okay, this is going to be something I'm going to have to just like be happy and smile through, where it's like, oh shit, this is actually good. So I've always placed so much self-worth on actually delivering like a
So
good
that's an
experience.
interesting point that you brought up, because it's like
Yeah.
this, I don't have the right word right now, but it's this idea of like, A, you got to believe in yourself to put yourself out there. But B, there's also like you gaining validation, approval, and all of that stuff from the crowd's reaction.
Yeah.
And again, you alluded to this earlier before as well. It was, the class clown. You already saw it happening in the class, and you decided like, yo, this is what I do. This is who I am. This is what I'm good at. And I think it's an interesting thing because I know there's also a lot of artists listening, and there's this fear of putting themselves out there. There's this fear of putting their work out there. And we're in a world where everyone is allowed to have an opinion now, and they can hide their faces when they express their opinions towards you.
Yeah.
And there's this also this kind of measurement that doesn't go away. So I think I've seen it now even amongst the most financially successful people, which is like, because I think it's in our DNA. We understand ourselves in relation to how other people respond to us.
Yeah.
How are you? And for you, there's also the fact that you're broke. You know what I mean?
And that's embarrassing. And I'm trying not to be. Like, I'm wearing True Religion jeans. I'm wearing Dolce & Gabbana shirts that I didn't
which
buy.
probably isn't helping either, though.
And it's feeding me into these situations where there's expectation where you got to split the bill, and there goes your fucking food money for a couple of days because you put yourself in a risky situation. Like, high level of like reactivity of like consequence due to not having sufficient resources, a stress that I didn't have to put myself through, but I didn't know any better. It's not, I don't come
So
from
you
a
had
family.
to put yourself through because you didn't know better.
I know. So yeah, exactly. It's like, there's no safety net. What do you mean safety net? Like, I spend until I'm broke, and then hopefully I get the opportunity to get more. And if not, I'm right back where I started. And like, that type of trap syndrome is called that for a reason, because it's a trap. And then your adrenals are always going. So your mental state is affecting your metaphysical reaction. Your adrenals is draining your body's like ability to actually function, and it's poisoning your body. You're poisoning your body when you're always worried. And so it's like
It's that constant hum of anxiety. It's not the, oh shit, my alarm didn't go off anxiety that gives you the energy to get up and run. It's that other one, which is debt, which is uncertainty, all of that. And so how did you, and then the challenge with that is, and I think this is, you're going through that, you're feeling that hum of anxiety. Plus you're in a situation where you probably couldn't afford to eat nicely and cleanly if you wanted to. So that probably just compounds the issue as well.
In and out, baby.
Yeah.
You buy a chicken from Ralph's.
That's funny you brought that up. One of my agents used to do that legitimately. Ralph's is a grocery store in LA, and you would always just buy a roasted chicken.
Yeah.
So you've been doing this now for, I don't know, 10, 15 years,
hitting stages,
10, 15 years.
Yes, sir.
You have pretty much, you left the zoo for the jungle.
Yes.
And you've been, you've taken your licks. You'll take more licks. And I mean, we still have conversations, and we still help each other identify our strengths and our weaknesses and stuff. And, you moved to Toronto, and I know you were making money performing on the streets for a while. And I think that's an important, again, this for me is less about exotifying your street story. And for me, it's more about sharing the by any means necessary of it.
Nice.
It's not about like romanticizing the street life. It's more about like do whatever it takes to make shit happen. Pragmatic. And I do appreciate that you, at the same time, you're not romancing it either, because when family could help, they helped, and you acknowledge that. I think everybody, it's not everybody's going to be 50 Cent and take 9 bullets and do whatever. It's, as I said, your pain is not part of your branding. And if anybody, just started listening to your music right now, they might hear hints of it. But that's what I really appreciate about you. It's just, you've gone through all this shit, and it's made you who you are, which is what makes it so fascinating for me. But at the same time, you don't let it define you.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that. That took extreme intention.
Talk about that.
I literally had a psychic medium come up to me in a bar and say, 2012, I was with my bandmate at the time, Tyson, hit the streets. I moved to Toronto with $400 in my pocket on a Greyhound. That's it. Stayed at my uncle's in Bowmanville, took the bus into the city until I got a small room that cost me $200 a month as a small room offshoot to the kitchen in a cleaned up crack house on Parliament Street in Regent Park in 2012.
What up, Regent Park?
Hey. So, I was hustling it out, and we were hitting bars, and we were hitting the streets, and we were getting invited to house parties. And this is when I really went hard. You think I went hard as a teenager. Dude, 22-year-old me. Winnie moved to LA again to do yoga training. So she's a Bikram yoga instructor, getting into that. And I was in her parents' basement in Alberta. That's where we moved after we fell into a heavy slump in Vancouver. And my buddy was moving to Toronto, going across the country. So we moved out here. And so it's me and my bandmate. I just wanted to give context of like why I was rolling around with like a bandmate or what that was about. So I was in a duo, and this lady came up to me who reminded me of my wonderful Auntie Wendy back in Vancouver, but she was brunette. And she said, "You're very interesting." And I said, "Thank you so much. You as well." And, just being a friendly guy. And she's like, "You're in entertainment or music?" And then she, without telling me who she is, lets me know who she is. You know what I mean? It's like, this is a moment. For some reason, this moment's been placed in your path. Like, I don't know. You feel it sometimes when it's like, I should just listen right now for no reason to this person I don't know.
Yeah.
And she goes, I see that you're starting something new here. And then I was like, yeah, we just started a duo. I just moved to the city. And I had a job at Zipcar. We were hustling it out. And she goes, I see that you've had some pain and you've benefited from it, but it's time to now not wear that anymore. She's like, it's time to not wear that on your sleeve anymore. It's probably that time for you now. If this is a new thing for you, let that be the signal. And she later came into my life through another random circumstance. Shout out Carrie, super lovely lady, contributed to my busking tour crowdfunding that I did. Actually helped me make the goal. So sweet. By any means necessary, that scooter tour has that written all over it. But someone literally said that to me, who was drawn, who had like a psychic ability in that moment to tell a person who she was inspired. So I've always been one to kind of follow the esoteric. My mom did like give me a good hand into that. My dad's very pragmatic and kind of against it at first, but he's like just like a little Alan Watson training now. But
so that told you
I
like, look,
that.
don't worry, you know, because don't wear your pain as an identifying badge.
And I'm not the victor anymore because it's a new circumstance. And I've constantly had to teach myself to get out of survival mode. So if I was going to take nods in this direction, and then right after that, dude, we got fucking booked with the Swedish Trade Commission. So I was now in political things. We were on Yorkville offices. We were getting booked for peanuts by a very conservative crowd. And then they would often ask me to host. So, and then I could bump up the price. So I'd always say yes. So I really actually went from like, if we got a box right now, like it's all right. Like I'm warmed up, like type vibe when I walk in a room, to like, who's my next client?
Yeah. I'm as non-threatening as possible.
Where's the money at? Where's the white at? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like I was just like not really being an authentic version of myself because I was finding a new way to create business with my art or what I wanted to do. So I came into Toronto with my intention, and my sword was rap, and I was going to get in these circumstances and raise my vibration of life. No, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't write any of this down, but I knew I was climbing the ranks in vibration, going almost like people say they want to make it like get a Grammy. Me too. That's cool. Fun fairy tale. I made it when I stopped considering myself like the potentiality to go back into that old state of thinking of struggle and lack and street justification and stuff, and made it into a space where I just wanted to start to feel good. So I was going to, by any means necessary, hustle out who I authentically was to get where I wanted to go. And you just got to adapt, I guess, along the way, because each fucking chapter will ask of a different thing.
So tell me about this. I want to go through some of the notes that I kept. And one of the big ones is, as somebody, and this is a story for most people. It's what we had to do when we were young to just keep our lips above water. The coping mechanisms, the defensive mechanisms can often harm us when we're adults. You know, the what was good for us back then may not be the best for us now. So you had so many in your face requirements to survive, in your face living in scarcity and dealing with all of that. And you said it yourself just like about 5 minutes ago about how you no longer want to be in survival mode. I just want you to talk about just specifically this idea and this mindset of survival mode versus living in abundance versus living in the world outside of fear.
Amazing. Yeah. So it's like a preset you can have on your perspective. It's like a lens. So are you pinching pennies, or are you saving towards a goal? Literally how you phrase things, there's subtleties, and some people can say, oh, like semantics, but it's like, no, perception, positioning. You know, you ever talk to someone and you know that you're a client, or you know that they like want something from you because you have something? As my numbers go up, I experience it. I'm sure you get it in tenfold. You know, it's cool, man. It's cool. Like this world got to turn. We all need something.
You know what it is? It's something I've been telling a lot of people who are in the infancy of their journey, and where they find frustration in people not believing in them. I said, yo, it sucks when people don't believe in you. It's even worse when they all pretend that they always believed in you. You know, like I have a family member that I clearly remember making fun of me on my journey, and then I clearly remember asking me for a massive favor once it popped off, and that second time hurt way more that
know.
they thought that they could just, that I wasn't going to remember those moments. So I can definitely relate to that.
The baby of that story, you know, people, you know, reaching for a goal say, oh, I can't deal with the pain of the bad side of this. You can't deal with the pain of the good side of this.
Yeah.
People now respecting you because of something like, yo, keep a tight watch on even just successes you may share on social media and who randomly appears. Like, it's
Yeah.
like, what? Didn't I ask you for a collab? Like, what? Like, you know,
Yeah.
it's like,
No, that's a
it's all
really important one.
good. It's all good though. You know, at the end of the day, like we've had some cool discussions about like just like the totem poles of life as well, and just like staying focused on your now,
Yeah,
because
where
no
you're at.
matter what someone wants from you or what you think you want to provide, it's like none of that shit should matter for your own self-worth. Like,
Yeah.
it's like just you're in your own creation mode.
So I like that, and I think it's just important to kind of remind people that, as I said, there's one thing to actually need to survive, and there's one thing to just be trapped in the survival mindset, even when you're no longer there. And it can get
Oh yeah.
romanticized. It's the reason the millionaire can want to be the 10 millionaire, and the reason the 10 millionaire wants to be the billionaire. It gets romanticized. We're like, it's not enough. It's not enough. I need more. I need more. And to be honest, like that's not romantic. That can actually be a sickness, and it can actually not be sustainable. Like if you're not happy with what you have, especially once you pass the struggling phase of your life, then you're not going to be happy with anything you get.
Yeah, I think that the abundance, okay, I've seen some of the most lack mentality from people who are hella paid.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like you can't manifest financial wealth, but it's not going to mean anything unless you act abundantly about it. Like, abundance is like having enough for everyone, and then more. It's not trying to save the couple dollars, because that's lack mentality. Abundance goes full hand in hand with like complete confidence about things. Like, you have to be like, you know, the easiest way to say this reference is about money, even though I don't think abundance or wealth is just about money. I think that it's like the element of just value. Say if you want, you know, money or love or whatever, it's going to come in, you're going to want it, and you're going to get the opportunity to get it, and it's going to come in, and you got to move it through you by also giving. So when you get the checks, like, spread some, or when you feel loved, reach out and share that love or give that love back.
Yeah, because
It's
they
like
exist in a flow. They can't be.
you have to be in the flow of the universe. And when you start like, it's like even some artists getting sticky about like percentages on songs or stingy in that regard. It's like, yo, like we should all be thinking like, okay, let's push this so fucking 5% looks like everybody's getting paid, you know, like, you know, where's the more? Where's the more? Trying to find more. The universe favors more.
Because by default, we're also like when we live in lack, when we live in scarcity with that mindset, we're
Oh,
actually
it's
closing
scary.
doors to things. When you
Yeah.
think you don't have enough love, you close yourself off to the love you do have. When you think
Yeah.
you don't have enough money, you close yourself off to money that could be coming your way. And I don't want it to be a cosmic idea. I want it to be a perspective idea, because we are what we our focus decides what we pay attention to. Our brains are designed to ignore most of 99% of the world, because we'd be overwhelmed otherwise. So now if you're like, I don't have enough, I don't have enough, then your brain is going to be looking for proof to validate that belief, more
Yep.
so than your brain's looking for these opportunities to be like, oh, wait, here's another opportunity to gain more. Oh, here's somebody who's actually showing me some beautiful pieces of love. Here's all of these things. So it's kind of going back to the idea that your thoughts paint your life. If you think that life sucks, you're more likely to notice where life sucks. If you think life is wonderful, you're more likely to notice where life is wonderful. And this brings to this other really interesting point you talked about is, making that active effort not to revisit and restab yourself with the past.
Yeah.
I want you to expand on that, because I know, I was, with the Joe Dispenza thing, he talked about how when we think about how horrible our past is, every time we remember it worse than it actually was. We
It becomes,
continually reprogram that story to get worse and worse and worse.
dude, it always gets bigger. It's like a bigger, scarier monster.
Yeah.
And here's what I noticed. You got to take responsibility for why subconsciously you're feeding it back to yourself over and over. That's been a key for me. Pull the floor on that shit. If you can get out ahead of it, understand what it was, unlock it, take the lesson and move on, it's probably not circling back. But sometimes we use it to restab a pain addiction. I've used it for people who like just don't like me or wanted to find a reason why I had a flaw. I was keeping that narrative around to almost be like, yo, maybe that person's right. Or like some fucked up shit like that, like some weird inner depth self-worth shit. And you got to unlock those concepts by like facing them head on and being like, what was this situation? Where's the gold in it? What did I do? Do I want to experience it again? Can I tick off a list of precautions I can do to not leave myself vulnerable in that decision again? I talked about this recently with Winnie on our podcast, and I was talking about how sometimes following the idea in your head against your gut will land you in the worst situations. Because all these situations, I was like, there for a friend against my gut. You know what I mean? It wasn't an idea I was connected to, you know? And if you follow your heart, it's like, oh man, that sounds so fucking cheesy. But like, if you allow your heart-centered thinking to engage in your primary cognitive perspective, then you will consider the highest intention. And that means so everyone can benefit, not just you. So I used to get FOMO about things. Say you're what do you call it? Basketball. Basketball. That's what y'all watch a lot, right? So people clicked up and like go and they watch these games.
Did you just call basketball Baskin Robbins?
I'm just playing. I'm just joking. I'm just Leo.
Oh, you're talking about, okay. So just for context, so Evan is openly not welcome to our basketball games.
I love you guys. Have so much fun. But I just, here's what I know in my heart. There's someone who really grew up watching basketball who is like, this means so much to me. And I'm like, that person can have my seat. Yeah. Like, I'm going to distract from this thing. It doesn't mean I'm not your friend. It doesn't mean I'm not in this tribe. It doesn't mean I'm not in this troop. It's like in that specific thing, like when we go freestyle, hey, if you participate in this activity, let's do this. And if not, still love you. All good.
We'll call you later. Yeah.
Call you later. Call me after the game so I don't pull you, because I don't care enough to engage in it. So I don't want to pull you away from it.
Yeah. So and again, it's not your fault. You're from a different city. It's, you know, you're not from a
Vancouver. Town. The Grizzlies left, dog. All I had was Space Jam, and then we all know what happened with R. Kelly. So I had to turn away. I had to turn the cheek. But I'm saying I don't get FOMO anymore because I'm listening to the highest purpose of the situation, not my top ego task to like be involved and look like I'm part of the troops. You know, it's like sometimes I just gotta accept I'm like an art geek. I'm gonna go make a freestyle, and I'm like, I'll catch you guys later. Like, that's sick. Like, you know, I love it. So I've found that to be really healthy and therapeutic for nipping in the bud any anxieties that like come up in my life. And that's a fun little example. But you know that there's cliques or groups that maybe you let trigger parts of yourself that lead back to not feeling worthy. And you don't have to do that.
And that's a really good one, because that's also and I have it written here like on one of my a million sticky notes. Most trauma comes from our relationships. Most healing comes from our relationships. And, the trauma comes from, especially when you're young, this moment where somebody who mattered made you feel like you didn't matter. You know, that's the simple way of putting it. Then you become an adult and you revisit that moment. You're like, oh, that person who made me feel like I didn't matter, they weren't doing it on purpose. They lack tools. There's different contexts.
They're insecure,
but it's also like, they just didn't know how to do better, or they didn't even realize they were causing damage with the decisions or the jokes or whatever they made.
And the best thing you can say is they didn't mean to hurt you.
They didn't.
They didn't mean to. Yeah. They did. But you got to accept that apology that you're never going to get.
Yes.
Before you get it. Yes. Just like I'm accepting my Grammy. You know what I'm saying? Yes. Right now, and then I'll get it.
That's a beautiful sentiment, and it's speaking from this context, because how we feel about ourselves is so, and again, we're not going to flip a switch and not care what other people think about us. But what we can do is we can do that work. So whether it's, me and you having that conversation about like, yo, It's the Raptors playoffs. I just want to be in a room full of people who care about the city, care about this team, care about the sport.
Hold on. Don't mix in the city with the sport. I see what you're doing there. I'll show up for the city any day of the week.
You will. And it's, and I remember when I explained it to you about, how giving you context about, me growing up with it, what it meant to me.
It's important.
Entering a contest to name the team, all of this, you're like, oh, like it's a big fucking deal.
Yeah. So much context.
Yeah. And wanting to be in that and wanting to be in that environment. And it's the same way, the reason I'm purposely not asking you about the hip hop question is because that would be another 2 hours. And also the reason I'm not going to ask you about the Winnie question is because that'll also be another 2 hours. And I definitely am going to have you back for a conversation specifically about love. What I do want to do before I ask you my final question is I do want to honor you on something that I've also noticed about you. And I think is really dope. And this is something that other people can actually do. If you follow Evan on any of the socials, and specifically, if I'm going to recommend you follow him on his socials, I would say his Instagram, but also on his Twitter, because Evan's Twitter is, you can hear, and they're both the same, Ellevan Music.
Yes, sir. Yep.
ELLEVANMUSIC. Ellevan Music on Instagram and Twitter.
That's it.
Instagram is fantastic, but what I want to point out with Twitter, if you guys are on Twitter, you want to follow him, is he, and this is why it's important. Despite all this work, despite everything that we presented today in today's conversation, he's open and honest and active about processing this stuff. And I see it a lot on Twitter, where I can see you take things that are bothering you, and I can see you processing them. And it's almost like, okay, this is where I start. Something just happened and I want to react to it, and I want to give it the middle finger, or I want to say fuck off, or I feel left out, or I feel excluded, or I exposed myself to an artist that made me feel petty and I want to be like, yo, fuck that guy, I'm better than that guy, or I feel like I'm not getting what I deserve. Common thoughts that every human being has. And then I watch you process it. I watch you reframe it. I watch you do the work. And then the sentence that comes out is something completely positive, completely, and it's not a holier than thou that like the Beyonce, I woke up like this. I feel like there's a spiritual version of that too. Like, I don't react to anything anymore. I am always at peace. You don't do that. You express it all. And you're expressing it all and figuring that out and processing it every single time. And for me, it's interesting because I notice it right after I have a real life conversation with you, and I see it spill on into your Twitter. But also,
the circuitry.
Yeah, but then even when I haven't had a conversation with you in a while, and I see it pop up on your Twitter, I'll just like, there's so much raw honesty there. Whereas a guy like me will still, I'll skip some of those steps. I'll wait a couple of more days, and I'll wait till like literally the emotions of all these things are mute before it even comes out. And
you're wise. I look up to you in that respect, bro.
I mean, but at the end of the day, what that also does is that gives this impression that I don't have emotions, or that gives this impression that I'm walking around zen, which is not the case for anybody. No. And I think what I really appreciate that with you, because you do that work, and in addition to that, it's we could probably go on another hour about your actual story, but I think the beauty of it is, as I said, like from dropping out of school at 16, from not having the most stable home situation, from taking a lot of risks, some out of necessity, some out of adventure, you through a lot of trial and error and continuous trial and error. I know you're not where you'd like to be, but also
this train is just at like the third stop of like 30 stops. We're cool.
But you've been figuring it out. You've been cracking codes. I mean, like you live in a space you own. You know what I mean? Like you've done a lot from $200 a month crack houses. Like, you know what I mean? Like you've accomplished a lot, and you've done it as a creative, as an artist, and it matters because the stats are not in our favors to figure stuff out. And again, there'll always be somebody with more. There'll always be way more with less. But I think there's something to be said, because when I look at you, and especially in the year 2019, you released a music video and a song every single day.
In 2018, 300, 200. The year after
I've known you
Facts.
for too long. I keep thinking I met you.
Yeah. Which year was it now?
Yeah.
I know we're into our 4th year.
Yeah,
2018, and we had our first song After Facts together. They're on one of those albums, but 365 music videos. Yeah. World record. And
That's and I think just like the sheer grit of that, you know, so many people, especially in the arts world, and I'm talking to my artists now who are listening, you know, we always make it about talent. We always make it about knowing the right people. No, like it's about the fucking grit. Who,
yeah.
you know, and again, that's a whole other conversation about the things that you realize by doing that. But I think
Yeah.
simple fact that you put your mind to it and said, I'm going to do this. I am inspired to do this. And you did it. And this is the thing, you actually did it. And it's interesting because sometimes one of my guilty pleasures is when people reach out to me when they start podcasts, is my guilty pleasure is saying, hit me up at the end of the year because I know your podcast will be that much bigger.
Nice.
Knowing that 80% of them won't be podcasting by then.
Oh, of course.
You
Oh
know,
my
because,
God. But if you say that to someone who's definitely focused, it's like wonderful.
yeah.
Give me actually, give me 16 months.
Well,
it's like,
I haven't gotten that yet, but I did get somebody who followed up and they were still there and they said, you were right. My podcast is bigger and better.
Nice.
And I think the beauty of that is because there's this corner cutting mentality that people have, which is like, yo, let me get a big guest on my first podcast. Not realizing that they're setting themselves up for failure with that one big guest because, you know, it's not going to compare to episode 2 or 3 or whatever. Oh. And I thought it's really interesting because you committed to doing the music video, you know, on the first day, but and I'm sure there were days you didn't want to do it. I'm sure there were days it was hard. And it's that consistency and persistence.
I rapped sick in the bed. I had Winnie hold the phone over me and I like taught her how to upload it to the drive. Like it was Corona level sick 4 days before I shot my special same year, actually.
and this is the thing. Your work ethic is impeccable and it's amazing.
Thank you, bro.
And I think
I appreciate you.
You know, some of my tweets are on auto tweet, and I think one of my tweets recently that went out, and it blew up because Lily found it and she retweeted it, and it was said, I said, I don't know anybody who stuck with it, had nothing to show for it, and you know, and
well, she no wonder she shared that. She's like, yes,
because it's just something, you know, and it was the same thing with her, like, you know, dropping these two, you know, dropping 2 videos a week when she first started her YouTube career, and it was like, you know, 8 views, 86 views, 130 views. Like it grows, and obviously we all have expectations of wanting to grow bigger than we have, but that progress, and there's something beautiful about that. So I definitely want to honor you on those things because there's this level of honesty, there's a level of vulnerability, but there's also this just ferocious beast when it comes to the work. And there's sometimes even when we work together on different things, there's just certain times, and I know this is a part of my personality that I'm still addressing, where it's like, if somebody puts a piece of dry, uncooked spaghetti in front of me, I'll be like, oh, I hit a barrier. I got to go lie down now. You know what I mean? Like legit, like give me any reason to stop and I will stop. And Lily helped me view like, yo, somebody can put a brick wall in front of you. It doesn't matter. You know,
and bust right through.
She won't even acknowledge it. She just, you know, and the big one that I learned from her was, you know, mine was, I can't start until I use the bathroom. And hers would be like, I can't use the bathroom until I finish.
Bro, that I've literally
that with
done
you too.
I've done that to myself. Yes. No peeing. Finish the verse.
And we're not saying it's healthy. You know, urinary tract is a real issue.
Don't do that. But yo, I bet
the mentality and the spirit is beautiful.
Bless you. Thank you so much. That literally means the world to me that you see that and that you appreciate that, and you're a beautiful soul. Let me know if you see the same intent in Lily's eyes when it's like, it's not even about the thing though anymore. So the result becomes irrelevant. The quality of the thing should be good just because it's a statement on your craft and artistry and focus. So try to make the thing as best you can, but it becomes less about what the barrier is as much is about the muscle I gain from breaking through that barrier. And then I get to keep going on in the game now with this muscle. Or like you sharpen your sword. It's like her first skit didn't probably look like her 400th skit, just like my verses along with the mixing. It's the value you're like hyper speed understanding. And it's almost like another being is driving at that point.
Well, and it's and that's the thing I think that I didn't realize for a long time is you're not pushing the wall, you're breaking through it. And you're granting yourself. And I think for me, probably the first time or the clearest time for me is the ice baths, because you sit in the ice and you definitely hit the wall very quickly. And I know, I helped you experience your first one.
Thank
And
you so
then when
much.
you get through that first wall,
Mm.
then you can do 10 more minutes. Survive the first 30 seconds, you can do 10.
It's so crazy, this switch that happens. And you'll notice, just like everything, it's right on the other side of when you find your calm in it. Because you can only like allow that flow with like a certain pace. Like I noticed, because at first I was like, and then, but I just went to the pain. And then you were like, now observe it. And I was like, oh, you're so brilliant that you showed the door that way. I took the door and then tried to hyperspeed that process, and everything was just pointing towards do less. Like do less. Like you can't win. Like you got to submit. You know what I mean? Like you have to just
and I think that's the beautiful thing about it. It's flow it requires submission. So when you hear, you hear these stories about like someone hasn't eaten today because they got caught up in the work, or they do all of this, and there's a beauty to that. And that flow can exist in gardening. That flow can exist in gambling. That flow can exist in amazing sex. That flow can exist in writing. It can exist in so many different things in this world. And that's why that trial and error, I think, is really important. So I want to honor you for that, because you're coming back to Toronto so often. I catch myself validly, because Toronto serves its purpose in my life, but it also serves its purpose on this planet for what it is. But it's not Los Angeles. It's not the place where all the dreamers go. It's not, so sometimes I can feel like, okay, I spent 5 years in Los Angeles. This place isn't my speed. I'm not going to find the hustlers. I'm not going to find the big dreamers. I'm not going to find that. But you're one of those. You are the hustler. You are the dreamer. You are that's not a wall. That's the speed bump. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
That's not a scary dragon. That's a little puppy. Like you're that person, and it feels amazing. And it's also, and I love how fucking weird you are. I love it. Like I love it so much, because we've been conditioned to be taught like you got to act a certain way. And going back to self-love before I finish this with one last question, it's when you come across people who are so unapologetically themselves and are doing it from a place of authenticity, that means that they've been able to express their true selves to themselves. You know what I mean? And I was writing about this today. Like the only opportunities that the average person has to do that is if they're regularly writing in a journal that they're confident no one will ever see, or when they pray.
Right.
Those are the only times you can be 100% honest, because civilization dictates that we can't. You know what I mean?
It doesn't allow the time frame.
Yeah, which is, and I respect that. And I think with you, I see the efforts with that, and it's just a reminder, like, yo, like, loosen up, let it all out, and I think it's a really good thing. So I want to honor you for that. So here's my last question.
Thank you, bro.
The popular question is, if you can go back 5 years, what would you tell yourself? My question is, if you can go 5 years into the future, what would 2021 11 say to 2026 11?
What would the me now tell the me then?
Yes.
Oh, nice. Whoa, that's cool. I've never been stretched in that way before. I would say, congrats, you did it. No, I would say, remember when they didn't listen. But we already kind of touched on that, because I if I believe where I'm going to be at, I might just be almost out of touch with having to win people over. And I never want to forget that. Because I still get I'm in a weird, interesting, hilarious, blessed, wonderful space right now where I'm like Will Smith again before he got the Fresh Prince. What do you mean? I'm on the teeter-totter. Is it not? Is it? I was kidding. I'm talking about like a primary, widespread perception of like what I could do. So if my dreaming is correct, I would always want me to know that it wasn't about them. It was always about the joy that you got. So if you're struggling to write authentic songs based on your recent experiences, remember winning them over, the joy of winning them over.
Yeah, and I think that's beautiful, and something, I forgot who said it to me, but it was like, enjoy the freedom of obscurity,
Yeah. And like,
because when you don't have it,
and the more and more I like grow in life and gain like wonderful experiences, actually I shout you out in a song. I didn't send it to you yet because we're gonna do our little playback hang. Uh but it's I send you out something. I said, actually, my homie Humble says, unless you did it yourself, you haven't made it yet. And then later in the song I talk about the resilience of just that promise to yourself, of like what you thought it was going to look like. You
yeah.
could have the exact stats that you wished, but it's like still it may not perceivably be what you thought it was going to look like, but like the actual joy you get from the action is like you can't like it. There's no pile of money, there's no validation award that can really get in the way of that, because like those are like just things like, and they're great, dude. You know about money, money's great, but like it's still to be able to eat, that's really nice, or have the comfort to buy the shoes that you want when you want to buy them or whatever. But it's like, that energy is what source is collecting data from your being about,
Mm.
so the sweeter things look, because your circumstance shouldn't define your happiness. Your happiness should be in your head no matter what the circumstance, so
How
yeah.
we respond to that. That's beautiful. Um, so
That
tell
was a cool
people.
question. That was challenging. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, no. Listen, man, and I love your enthusiasm towards being challenged, right? So tell people how they can find you, or how you want them to find you.
I would love, if you're an Apple Music or Spotify listener, if you just went and checked out some of the mindful hip hop that I've been putting out. And when I say mindful, I don't mean the classic way of a conscious rapper talking about all the problems in the world. I mean literally mindful. Hopefully, a self-discovery journey as you listen to these pieces of audio that I sample Abraham Hicks in. My boy Humble rolls with me on one or three. Cheers, bud? And
Cheers.
and take that time for you, like with that music. And then if you like all the extra stuff, hit me on the socials. But it's Ellevan Music everywhere. It's ELLEVAN. That's on Spotify or Apple Music. And then just added music to that, daily TikTok freestyles, all that.
Yo,
Yo,
that's dope. So
thank you.
with that said, thank you so much for again being a part of this, sharing yourself, man. Like,
My
bam,
pleasure.
bam, 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 exclusive, world premiere, flex
Yes,
drop a bomb.
several drops. Yeah.
Yeah, no, man. I think it's super important, and I want. I think what I'm excited about with at least this season of the conversations I'm having them with, um, I'm having them with friends. So it's been really interesting to be able to have conversations where um, we're discussing heavy shit, but also our level of comfort with each other is so heavy, where
Yeah.
we're speaking without filters. And I know um, part of me feels like this is going to be uh, a tutorial for many people too, as to like the Toronto experience. How
Yeah.
freely we can talk about race, how freely we can talk about traumas, how we can laugh at unpleasant situations, how all of these things can just be there, and it's been a common theme. So like, again, I appreciate that. Um, and again,
Totally.
as somebody who's not the most uh, open with his own stuff, I want allowing me to share a peek of some of my regular homies that I'm spending the most time with and stuff like that, and building with, and that would be chapters in my eventual autobiography. So I appreciate you for that, brother.
Yo, man, my pleasure and honor, and always with you, whatever you're
Yo,
doing.
thank you, brother. Bless.
Thank you, man.